Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call today's meeting of the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight to order. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Committee, are there any changes, any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing nothing, if somebody could move to adopt the agenda.
Sorry, I had asked whether we could just get a quick update on the bridge. Like, do we need to put that on the?
I have that for my roundtable.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, fine, thanks.
Okay, if somebody wants to move to adopt the agenda. Trevor. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, the agenda has been adopted as presented. That brings us to adoption of meeting minutes. There's one set of meeting minutes from our April 13th meeting that need to be adopted. Committee, are there any changes to the draft minutes? Okay, seeing no changes, then we need a motion to adopt. Beth? Okay, Beth moves to adopt. All those in favor? Okay, our minutes for the April 13th meeting have been adopted. Information items, introduction of new BBOC members. Two new members here, two new members. So we could probably do a quick roundtable introduction. We could just we'll go around the whole table and we'll probably end with the two new members if that's okay with you guys. And so you can just introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about why you put your name forward for the committee and why the Beaver Boardwalk is important to you. And we could start. Trevor?
Yeah, I'll start. Trevor, I'm just a public member. Lived in Hinton for 4 years, and so probably the whole reason why we considered moving to Hinton in the first place is because of Beaver Boardwalk. When we were driving through, we just Googled what to do in Hinton for a lunch break. It came up, so that's why we stopped. Liked it.
Yes.
I'm education on the Beaver on the committee, and I'm president of the Whiskey Jet Club, which is a naturalist club that encourages participation and education. And I've been involved in the Beaver Boardwalk since Rick Bonner started the whole concept. And I think it's super important that like to me, it's a bridge from our busy urban lifestyles to wildlands. And we need to learn how to appreciate nature and conservation. And it's just, this is such a great opportunity, you know, right in Hinton to have a feature such as this, and the boardwalk and interpretive signage to help people appreciate it. So I guess that's why I'm still involved.
Okay, thanks, Beth. John?
John Vaswagen, I think I'm the recreation lead on this. I'm not sure, but and I think that's because I've been involved in a lot of the rec groups, including president of the bike club and disc golf and various other things. I'm also on a tourism committee. And I think with that tourism committee, I recognize the importance of the Beaver Boardwalk. I know some people don't want to turn it into a major tourist thing, but I think it is valuable nonetheless. And everything that Beth and Trevor have said, it's just a beautiful area that I spend every day walking my dogs on. And I know its importance in the community.
Oh, thanks, John. I'll go Tom.
Tom Marshall, I'm a public member of the committee. Find the area to be one where I spend a lot of my spare time. Long-term resident, find it to be a place that I gravitate to and feel it's very important.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Doug?
My name's Doug. I'm moved to Hinton recently, just last year, and the boardwalk is really one of the main drivers for us for choosing a house in the Hinton area.
Thanks, Doug. Chad, how do you go?
I'm Chad. I work for the town. I am the arena and parks supervisor.
Thanks, Chad. Heather?
Sure. I'm Heather Way. I'm the strategic services manager for the town. I did fill in for 1.5 years as the Parks and Rec manager. So that's kind of how I started with the original Beaver Boardwalk Committee, which was made up of council and admin, which set the parameters for what this committee would become. So in terms of continuity and just keeping the long line of knowledge, what we've been through the past 2.5, 3 years, that's why I sit here.
Thanks, Heather. So I'm Alberto Stashik. I'm a counselor for the town of Hinton. I'm the council appointed Beaver Boardwalk Committee member. Before that, I was a member of the original Beaver Boardwalk Committee that did a preliminary work to get to the stage where this committee was formed. Outside of that, though, I'm a citizen of Hinton, long-term citizen of Hinton. And in my other role outside the town of Hinton, we participated in the original construction of the Beaver Boardwalk. We donated some materials when it was being built, contributed to that. And also, in addition to that, it's important to me because, like a lot of you, I've spent a lot of time there too. Not so much in the last couple of years as our dog's no longer with us, but when he was, I used to walk him out there all the time. And yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's of value to the citizens of Hinton, and I want to see it hopefully get back to its former glory in some state. Not particularly thrilled about the way it is now, and I want to get it back to what it used to be. Right, so now there are 2 new members. So we want to go with Alice. You want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alice Paquette. I've been living in Hinton for 5-6 years. My role on the committee is environment. I'm a geologist by training, GIS tech by current what I do normally, and done a lot of field work and do database management as well, like just small scale data management. I love graphs, love maps, and I really love the Beaver Boardwalk. I think it's a great place that people can go and do wildlife. Like, you know, I lived in Canada my whole life, only seen a couple beavers, and it's nice that you can just go there in the evening in the fall and actually see them almost whenever you want. So I really hope it is there in its current form for future generations to appreciate. So I'm here.
Thanks, Alice. Joan?
I'm Joan Torres. I am the youth representative for this committee. Same as Mr. Councilor Postek over here. I have used the Beaver Boardwalk many times in my life. It helps you realize that you don't have to travel to Jasper to enjoy nature, that it's just right in front of your doorsteps. And I want to be part of this committee because I felt like youth could also appreciate the Beaver Boardwalk, bring their voice in, help shape the Beaver Boardwalk to, you know, have both adults and youth enjoy it as a whole. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Joan. Thank you, everyone.
And we are
Yep, Jan?
missing Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin's, he's the only one that's not able to join us.
So I just thought I mentioned there is one more person.
Kevin Gedling.
He works with Jasper Park. And, he's involved in a lot of this trails and type stuff. And I think it matches in with Trevor. And that's one reason why.
Didn't we move to 5:30 for Kevin's schedule?
Yeah, that's why we're doing meeting at 5:30 was for Kevin and he didn't even show up.
Kevin just messaged me.
Oh, it's probably
Someone's
waiting
ears
at
are
the
burning.
door.
Oh, maybe.
Here, I can go.
Thanks, John. Yes, the door is locked. He's here.
That might be something we need to address.
Yeah.
Anyway. Great, awesome. Thanks everyone for your introductions. Maybe we'll just wait a second for Kevin to come in and then Kevin can do his introduction. And
Yeah, being used to meeting at 4, I didn't even think the ladies locked the door. So,
yeah,
it's open next time.
I don't have your phone number. Well, I guess I probably do. I didn't even think to look at my phone list
I don't know.
because I was waiting to
You
get let
have to
in.
spray yourself down there, so.
Yeah, and then I saw your email come through and then
Oh, you
I
sent
sent you on.
Jan?
Yeah.
I guess I could have.
My bad, Kevin. I forgot to unlock the door. Sorry.
That's okay, I've
Okay.
never had to enter after hours, so.
Okay. He didn't even know it was supposed to be unlocked.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin in person.
We're doing a roundtable introduction of everybody, so if you want to introduce yourself quick to the new members and a little bit about why you put your name forward for the committee and what the Beaver Boardwalk means to you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. I didn't. Yeah, I saw some new faces. I'm Kevin. I put my name forward because one, I'm really new to Hinton, not too much to the area, so I just thought it was a cool way to kind of get involved. And yeah, and just I think, like I said to folks at the beginning, I personally came to the Beaver Boardwalk a lot when I lived in Jasper with my kid, and we just thought it was a really special and meaningful place to us. And it would just be a cool way to get involved. Plus, I have a bit of engagement experience in my work at Parks Canada, which is why I'm late. And maybe that can help at some point. So, yeah.
Okay, so
In fact, it's nice and
Kevin.
Yeah.
So this is our two new members, Kevin. This is Alice and Joan.
Hi.
I don't know if you guys want to go through your spiel again or just move on. But there are two new members. I'm sure you'll get to it. Alice.
Do the quick version of Alice on the environment. Interested in stewardship.
Oh, that's great.
Joan, if you want to do a quick version too.
Yeah, I'm Joan. I'm just the youth representative.
Not just.
Not just, you're the only person here with a tie for God's sake.
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, I was going out my bed. I was like,
It's always a good
tie,
idea.
yeah,
to wear-
tie.
Always a good idea to wear a tie.
So I was like,
That's right.
I'll wear a tie. Yeah, I'm just
Not just.
deep.
Joan is the one and only youth representative. Awesome.
Thanks.
Good. All right, so that brings us to our second information item, number 3.2, insurance and liability.
Yeah, so I have an update for everyone. I reached out to our new insurance lady, and she has advised that we are covered for volunteer assistance on certain projects. However, they must adhere to all WCB and OHS requirements. So that would require that we provide them adequate PPE or they bring their own, and that we provide them appropriate training and review of hazard assessments and these kinds of things on site if we were to do that work. So that's where it's important to kind of pick and choose which ones make sense in terms of kind of drawing on Chad's folks to be able to provide all of those health and safety components. With respect to liability, we do have some concerns around machinery, for example. So we can't have volunteers operating machinery that they do not hold tickets to operate. I feel like that's fairly obvious, but yeah, so it's just a lot of kind of admin work that we would have to tackle, probably some additional time, but I think there's definitely some projects on this list that are definitely suitable for volunteer assistance. So I think it's something that we should consider as we take each bit of the project and how we can kind of roll those volunteers in if that's something that we do choose to do. That's my update on that.
John?
So we picked some work to do and we see that it's volunteer possible. Is that at that point, will you go to Chad to figure out what training and stuff, or is that for one of us to figure out? Or?
No, I think that would be something that Chad and I would have to do, probably even in collaboration with Angela and Health and Safety, because it is the town's liability and it would come under our insurance in the event that there was some sort of workplace incident. So they have to adhere to our regulations. So we would take them through that and ensure they have appropriate training, sign off that gets filed, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. It's nothing I would hate worse than OHS.
That's the spirit, Jan.
So just question. Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, but like that's for the sort of formal, we're repairing the boardwalk, but like in terms of just general volunteer stuff, like I was out with a group doing cleanup a couple of weeks ago, like, and like the public does do certain things around there. We don't have to worry about any of the town stuff if it's initiated like that.
Correct. If it's initiated, I mean, I would definitely recommend that, if a group of people are out, let's say cleaning along the highway, that they try and adhere to some kind of
Oh,
health and
yeah.
safety, wear a high vis, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. But if
Yeah.
it's a community initiative to go into the boardwalk area and pick up garbage or doing reclamation, depending on what we're doing, right? You might want to kind of reevaluate that. But yeah, no, just kind of, if it's initiated by the town or it's town funded and those kinds of things, we need to be extra cautious.
Right.
But I don't want to prevent people from just picking up garbage and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
it's-
Yeah.
Yeah, like we contacted Chad before and everything too, but, all right, so it's really more the town initiative that we, to be really a little more
Mhm.
cautious on.
That's right.
All right.
Any other questions? I have a question before we move on. So in terms of accountability, if something were to happen, if there's a group of volunteers, does the town designate somebody who's the lead hand or the supervisor or? how
Absolutely.
does
We
that
would
work?
not have them out there doing work without a foreman, if you will, that would be on site with them, because as part of OHS, it's required that the supervisor supervise the work and make sure that everyone is adhering to those regulations during the duration of the work.
So would that person be likely a town of Hinton employee, or could it be the leader of the volunteer group? Or-
It should be either a town of Hinton employee appropriate to the work. So if it's park work, that's Chad. If we were doing something out on streets, I don't know why we would, it would be someone from infrastructure services. If we use a contractor, we can assign them prime contractor and they can oversee that work. However, that is dependent on now the insurance that they have, and they would have to underwrite the town. So there's some challenges when you're dealing with contractors to get that done, because they might just not want to bid on it because it's more of a headache for them or more of a liability or cost to their insurance. But that is also a possibility, but I would think in most cases, it'll probably be someone from the town, either Chad, Jesse, or even myself.
Okay. Anything further before we move on? Okay, to nothing. That brings us to action items 4.1, review of boardwalk condition assessment. Nice section.
Right. I forgot my mouse, so bear with me while I share my screen.
Allison, John, do you guys have maps?
I have a copy digitally.
You have
Yeah.
one?
But
John, you have one? I think Jan has some paper ones there too.
Oh, yeah.
I can
I
take-
have, I still.
Chad, did you print my big map? That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole bunch. Yeah. Oh,
Whoops, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right, so I have it up on the screen. It's a wee bit small, so hopefully we can all follow. I couldn't figure out that TV on. I got 50% on that today. I'm sorry. Do you want to come up here so you can see?
Nope.
Nope, you're good. Yeah, okay.
You can get that one to turn on.
No, like I couldn't get it to like mirror over there as well, and then Gary left and I didn't know what to do. So here are all of the sections. So this is just a condition assessment. I tried to keep everything kind of in the same workbook. So there's different tabs at the bottom. Chad and I went through his previous notes that he had, and we just kind of wanted to make things consistent. So at the bottom, you can see that if it's highlighted as poor, that means it's currently closed. If it is highlighted orange, it's listed as fair. And that means that new piles are needed. It's seeing a lot of flooding, those kinds of things. If the section is good and yellow, that just means that the parks crew could probably get in there for a couple more seasons and just do a little straightening and leveling and that kind of thing. And that type of work, as a reminder, is permissible under our current maintenance approval through AEP. And then excellent, we really left excellent as the sections that have been most recently fully repaired. So there's like a few, right? We got 3, better than none. So you actually, by looking at this, Chad and I, once we color coded it, we were actually kind of surprised to see how many of the sections really just need some straightening and leveling. However, when we go into the next sort of slide or sheet, you'll see that the trickiest part is going to be the logistics behind thoughtfully choosing sections to repair so that we do not have to rip apart what we've just repaired to get to that next layer behind there, right? So just having some kind of thoughtful conversations around that. So you guys now have a condition assessment here. Are there questions on the condition assessment?
Any questions or comments about the condition assessment? Everybody kind of in agreement about that?
And Kevin, I can't, or not Kevin, sorry, Tom, I can't, okay, he's there.
Yeah, I think he turned his camera on, but I think he's still there.
For those of you on the screen, it's a little tricky from here, so just jump in if you have questions, okay?
Alice?
Yeah, so did you and Chad determine this in field or what, I'm just curious what you.
Yeah, so this is based on Chad's previous field notes, and I didn't go out
Okay,
there. I just do the computer work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because and just to follow up, there was, I think it was in the FOIP request that Stuart Taylor had done like year and a half, I don't know exactly what it was, but there was a line item that said ISL had done some kind of condition assessment, and I was wondering, is there like a document
That is in
linked to that?
Chad, I believe that's in the original Beaver Boardwalk viability study. Is that
Okay,
what that was called? I think
Something
like that,
yeah.
yeah.
I did look through the
It
document.
should be part of those minutes from way back when.
Mhm.
That's a couple of years ago now.
And that's why Chad went out and kind of updated even his notes from previous years,
Okay.
because it's so old now that even one winter can cause a whole section to be a little bit different, but I can dig it out from somewhere if
I
you like.
think I tried to find it at some point, and I did go through all the old agendas, and I couldn't find it. If you come across it, let me know, but I don't think you need to necessarily.
Did Jan lock himself out?
Yeah.
He went upstairs for something, I think.
And then couldn't get back in.
All right, so any questions on this one, or can I kind of move on to the next piece?
Just a question for Chad. Are you looking for feedback on this condition assessment? Or are you pretty comfortable with the choices, particularly between the good and the fair sections?
I'm fairly comfortable. I think, I mean, if you have feedback and you maybe saw something I didn't or whatever, just go ahead and tell me.
Okay.
For the most part, I think it's pretty accurate as it is.
Did you have a comment, Doug, or?
Nope, no comment. I was just curious. I mean, certainly if you are open to feedback, maybe over the next couple of weekends, we all know your email address. We could always drop you a line, but if you're really comfortable, then, it sounds good to me.
One other question, Chad, that I just wanted to address is this, I know we talked about kind of how seasons change affect this condition assessment. Is this something that you typically review every spring, or is it in the fall, or is it both? I just can't remember.
It's generally in the spring.
Okay. So we'll make sure to get this on a regular agenda so that we're reviewing and updating it as necessary.
Beth, did you have something?
Yeah, John, maybe I'll have some more work for you.
No,
No.
you're not my boss.
No, okay. I'll talk to the committee then. I wonder if it's possible to have a map with sections color coded.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
No, don't give me more work. Okay, I'll do it.
No, I don't know what she's gonna say, but that's obviously,
Like color coded by,
By condition.
by the
oh, by
condition.
condition, yeah.
Yeah, and then we just look at it and it just jumps out at us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also
Yep.
on that
Alice?
note, being a GIS nerd, if it's like, because you have them all separated by color, you can just put a dot, right, in between the sections, and then I'm sure you can figure it out.
I'm a GIS specialist.
Yeah, I am as well, so sure we'll talk about it.
All right. Can we go to the next section?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, why is it super zoomy? Stand by. Okay, maybe we'll look at this kind of column by column or a few columns at a time. So these are the results from the prioritization activity that we did a month ago. The only sections boardwalk area that you're seeing here are the ones that we prioritized. So when we go back to the condition assessment, all of the sections are there. This is just the prioritization activity. So what I did was I included the current condition assessment for that section so that that's kind of readily available to us without having to toggle between the two sheets. For some of them where we were combining sections like W, X, and T, for example, you can see here that most of it was fair, so I made it fair, but then obviously paying attention to the fact that X is actually in good condition. So that would be yellow. Then I have the prioritization total. So this is based on the ranking that you guys did, just to kind of give you guys an idea of sort of how many people thought this was also a priority. What I've also done is made a column for whether it's Water Act applicable. Now, keep in mind that whether the Water Act applies depends on how we do the work, and whether it will fall under our current maintenance approval or if we'll need a new approval to do that work. You can have two approvals in at the same time. We can have a maintenance approval and then also have a new project approval that can go into AP at the same time. Some of them, for example, have a to be determined. So as I was just saying, so for example, with the tower or with the water deck or dock, if we were to, let's say, put the dock on floats and build it off site and then just attach it, we don't need to worry about our Water Act other than the little attachments that we would be doing. We'd have to catch our sawdust, right? So it really kind of is an opportunity to take a look at how we do the work. So that's whether it's Water Act applicable. If I keep sliding over, this section here kind of alludes to what I was chatting about earlier, where Chad and I kind of were trying to identify how easy reaching each of those sections would be if we went with conventional construction. So if we're looking at replacing piles and we're looking at replacing decking, how easy it would be to access that, or how difficult. And then we also tried to kind of give like an orientation of where we would access that from. So I think if we chose like a particular project, if we wanted to do section A, for example, we would then likely dive into our map and really start looking at how we're going to access to do the repair. Further to that, I'm kind of jumping that column right now, we also included which season. Most of it is winter, but again, that totally depends on how we choose to do the work. The cost estimates in here, when you have your electronic version handy, please, these purple sections, do review the notes because these numbers are completely based on an average of what we paid fine line per meter. So it's just to kind of give us a jumping off point. Of course, we would need new estimates and new quotes and all of those things. This also doesn't include mob and demob. I didn't put that in there because it really depends how many, mobilization and demobilization of equipment when we go to start the work. That has costs associated with it, obviously. So if we can get a bunch of sections done at once, then we can factor in those costs later. And of course, the values that you see here were based on piles and decking. So if that changes, these numbers change, but it's just kind of a jumping off point. I see that Alice has a question. Do you want to go first?
Sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Alice.
just a quick question about, because I think in the notes it said it was based on the RFP, but I was just curious, is it based on the RFP or the work that the fine line actually did?
We used the RFP, which came in, their resubmitted RFP, not their original.
Okay.
And then which lined up pretty closely with the actual
Okay.
cost. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh God, what did I do? Okay, and then what I did was I also included a section here for if we had potential ideas around how we could alternatively do that work. So for example, with the floats, if we want to, like as we're talking today, if those kinds of ideas pop up, I want to track them just so that as we're really building our work plan, which is on the next sheet, we can, there might be some low hanging fruit where if we do the work a little bit differently, we got a little bit creative with it, we might be able to advance a little bit more rapidly. And then I included a column for our later use as to whether this will go out via RFP. Is it a combination of RFP, contractor, and like our town staff, or is this where we start to use town staff with volunteers? Signage is a really good option where we might get the community involved in what they'd like to see on the signs, and making sure that, we're meeting the needs of all with kind of even like the leveling of our signs. Are we putting some down low for the kids and some up high for the adults, et cetera, et cetera. Questions on this sheet? We will come back to do more work on this after I explain the third sheet.
Doug, you got a question?
Partially related to the sheet, do we have a written specification for replacing decking and piles underneath like for like, just based on what Fine Line did?
Chad, I mean, I don't fully understand the question. What do you mean a written specification, like a requirement or?
Yeah, basically piles of X size of X torque, decking of X size and X materials, that sort of stuff.
I'll give a general answer and then I'll go over to Chad. So typically through the RFP process, Doug, we have kind of given parameters for what they should include. And then we allow the contractors to kind of tell us what might work. And then we did, in this instance with Fine Line, we had a different contractor provide kind of an alternate solution that we hadn't considered. So we sent it back out to all of the proponents so that they could all consider that option and bring us different measurements and those kinds of things. Chad, can you add on that at all?
I don't have a lot to add. I know there was some specs that Fine Line did follow. I can't give you exact numbers.
Okay, the reason why I was kind of going with that one was that Fine Line's cost is quite a bit less than, say, the bridge ramp project, which was obviously a much higher specification. So it might be good to kind of look at what Fine Line did and think about how some of those aspects, technical aspects, could be adopted for other stuff in future rather than kind of leaving it a bit more open-ended.
And I think that is part of what they're doing with the bridge, because I believe in Councillor Stashi, perhaps you can speak to this, where it came back to council and then we pulled the RFP apart and they are modeling it after what we did with the boardwalk. Can we have one for pilings and one for decking and these kinds of things? So I think there's definitely room for improvement there, Doug. Thank you. Sorry, did you have anything to add to that one, or did I get it?
No, I do have something to add. I think that's actually something worth considering. I'd have to look back and see what the exact motion was, but I don't actually think that it was going to go full RFP. I think that if I remember, all it was just split. The decking work could be split from the pile work, but I'm pretty sure it was the same spec and everything. They were just going to split it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe that should be something that should be considered, that when it goes for retender, maybe it is the same kind of spec that that was used on the boardwalk sections, because it doesn't make sense to have different specifications for different areas of the boardwalk when they're all achieving the same end.
I'm just making a note. I'll follow up with.
Doug?
Oh, just a closing thought. There was that for our work, what we do is typically we don't leave too much up in the hands of the contractors. Typically, when we want work done in industry, we hand them 4 or 5 documents and say, this is what we need you to build, basically.
Oh, and to that end, Doug, I suppose I should have added that, like, Diana works with our engineers on a project and they provide those to us, and then we kind of include that in the RFP, right? And they have to fit within those parameters, in case I wasn't overly clear on that. Okay, got that note for Diana. Any questions on this? We are going to come back to it.
Who are your engineers that work with Diana?
Associated
town
engineering?
So
No, they're not.
right.
No more questions. questions on this bit? Okay. And then what I included is something that probably at our next meeting will probably be far enough to start populating. But this is very similar to capital plans that we kind of bring before council as part of the budget process. So I've built us out through to 2027. In the top here, what I'm going to do is this H column is something that can be hidden, but I'm going to update it. So today it'll get an update. So that's when it's updated. So we can always make sure that we are using the most up-to-date copy. And anybody who's interested will be able to see like how frequently we are working in this document and making any changes based on logistics or based on weather, giving us a nightmare again, those kinds of things, just for transparency and clarity. So we will populate this. I have removed G and H as well as the CC and D. And one of these might not be actually done, but we'll populate the rest in terms of which order we want to get the work done. Questions on any of these sheets before we dive into the next bit of the sort of activity of figuring out what project work we want to do? I'm kind of stealing your thunder over your counselor session. All right, just give her. Okay, so as you guys can see, section AA, so referring to our maps, came in at the highest priority. So that is the off of the outdoor classroom and connecting to the bridge. I think my understanding of why the group has prioritized that is because that's an essential kind of connection to the bridge. Does anybody want to speak to that? Do we agree or disagree? Does anybody really want to see section AA not be our first priority at this point? All right. The tower came in at, oh, Alice?
Yeah, I do have a comment about AA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Councillor Ostash, if we were just saying that, you know, the council might be able to consider the work that was done by Fine Line and sort of maybe incorporate some of those techniques. I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at, but you might actually be able to include AA as part of the bridge project because that is a pretty large budget. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but it's just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and actually Chad and I chatted about this when we did the calculation to realize AA is everybody's top priority. And we want to have a conversation with Diana about either combining the project or kind of beating her to it so that we can get that section done. So kind of figuring out what her timelines are, especially if there may or may not be an influx of funding, because really that's the thing that's holding us back at this moment. Other comments on AA while I pick up my pen?
So Heather, can we get, when would be a good time to talk about that? About maybe making a recommendation to
Yes.
do a bigger relook at the bridge ramp project?
Yeah, so the update that I have for the bridge later, this is something that I could get cleared up in probably about 2 weeks with Diana, and that would be well in advance of the RFP.
Because while process wise though, it's gonna have to, it would have to go to council.
Mhm.
And then council would have to make a direction to change the RFP. Sorry.
Yeah, so and by 2 weeks, I mean get it on the agenda within the next 2 weeks.
Can you just go over what you're talking about?
So, sorry, from my perspective, Doug made a suggestion that maybe the current specifications for the bridge ramps don't need to be as robust as they are, that they could be scaled back a little bit so they more closely match the pilings and the decking that are part of the work that Fine Line just did a month or so ago, which could, you know, that could result in some cost savings. And then Alice added that potentially
I get it.
section
I missed what
AA
those.
could be added into it too, if there's a significant cost savings. And yeah, potentially do it all at once. Yeah, Beth and then Trevor.
Yeah, I was just, Heather, could you be clear about what you mean by beating Diana to it? Because I find that this is really difficult for on the committee, is that somehow the bridge is not part of, it's separate from the boardwalk. And I understand that that's how the town is organized, but to me, it should be, we're looking at it as a unit. So if you could just explain that. was
Yeah, I
that-
suppose when I said beating Diana to it is because in my mind, I'm thinking two separate pots of money, right? So if all of a sudden we had a pot of money and she's off doing her bridge thing, then we could get in there and do what we need to do with AA. However, under this, I'm liking a lot better because there might be an option to explore expanding the funds that the town's already allocated to the bridge and just combining the projects together. So that's, and then further to Councillor Stashik's point, and kind of the update I was going to bring around Maxwell Lake Bridge is that the posting of the RFP is supposed to go out June 15th. So I have some time to get this to council for reconsideration in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And if I could, the other part about, I mean, it's not beating Diana
Yes.
to it in a negative way,
Yeah.
but process wise, she's already got direction and marching orders. So she's moving forward with that directions that she was given. So if it's going to change, it has to change before it's too far along or they're redoing work.
And the
do
reason
have-
that
Yeah, go ahead.
the reason that Chad and I said beating them to it is because once those ramps go in, our access to AA becomes more difficult. So that's another reason why he and I just were chatting about it. Like, oh, race her to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. But if you could combine it as one
Yeah,
project, you would, you know, you could deal with that. So,
Okay, so I got Trevor and then Tom and then Jan.
That's kind of what my comment was going to allude to is whatever bridge connection option Diana was going to go forth with, make sure it doesn't affect AA, because at the time we decided on which option, we weren't sure about AA, but now if that's going to go ahead, whatever Diana's doing, make sure it doesn't negatively impact AA connection, I guess.
Thanks, Trevor. Tom?
I guess to just the transition, if you're doing the ramp and section A together, it's easier to make those transitions from one to the other work a little smoother. Just a thought.
Yep, for sure. Thanks, Tom. Jan?
I guess when Doug spoke, I guess I heard something else. Maybe it was my own head getting involved, but what entered my head was, you know, the work that was recently done. Everyone likes it. It was a good job. So could we not, like, we must know per meter how much that costs, whether it was piles versus non-piles. And so can we not start using that? And so is that 166, is that using? Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the 166 was using what we
Just
paid.
paid.
What-
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's extrapolated from Fine Line's numbers for the
Correct.
sections that they just did. Yeah.
So we know how much piled versus unpiled?
We do know how much is piled versus unpiled, but I didn't calculate that into these numbers because each section may be tackled differently. So what I did was I just took an average and based it on that for our purposes in terms of, well, if we only have this much money, we should focus on this section. That's kind of where we're at, because of course we'll have to go back and get more updated quotes.
Yeah, I know, I'm just thinking GIS wise, we could probably figure out
If you want to.
cost per section.
That'd be magical, Jan.
Just keeping in mind their guideline
No, it's
numbers, so
an
there's
estimate, it's an
access,
estimate.
yeah, access and pile depth and all
Mhm.
kinds of other things. Alice?
I'm just curious, what about, or can you go back to I don't have it printed
Condition
out.
assessment?
Condition assessment, I just want to see about BB and YY, because if you're worried about access, those are really short segments, maybe loop those in with the bridge project too, but I might be getting ahead of myself.
Why? Did you say why?
No, just Y, sorry. Oh, I'm just getting excited. No.
B and Y are both, they're both listed as good.
Oh, okay, so then it's, never mind.
Yeah, and even to access BB becomes a little bit more trickier now that we've redone CC and DD. So it's almost like we need to get access to BB. The easiest access would be to take the ramps before the bridge or the gravel, what's currently a gravel trail, and head over to BB.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
I guess I'm confused because like you can't access it from just from CC, like you
No,
know,
because we changed out the decking. So the decking is softwood. So we can't drive the equipment that they need on top of it.
but you could drive it on the old boardwalk.
They
No.
didn't drive it on the wall.
On any of
They
the
ripped
boardwalks.
everything up?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
So we've lost our ability to
I'm wondering,
leapfrog.
I'm kind of wondering the same thing. I'm kind of
Oh.
surprised that they can't go beside it, but from the sounds of it, they ripped the old stuff out and then they drive on that and install backwards.
okay,
And
so
they can go beside it. It's just that's more impactful, right? They-
Yeah,
Yeah, if they can go
Yeah.
where they tore it up, then it's less impactful, less visual.
so that's the way we have to, that's why she's saying it becomes a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle, kind of figuring out how to work backwards
Yeah.
and stuff.
okay. So
Yeah.
given we can bring it to the bridge, we might then actually want to look at BB next, maybe.
Doug?
Just an observation, which was AA does seem to be certainly the favorite of the group. So certainly there should be some weight on saying that this is something that we're certainly recommending to be done. But I've noticed that the project's process kind of rolls a little slow. It's not really a judgment, just an observation. But rather than trying to roll that into Diana's scope, that would obviously delay things. It might be easier just to, work with her and say, hey, you've got your scope, we've got our scope, and please just let us build AA before you put those ramps in place.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't 100% recall, Doug, whether Diana's project is funded at all or partially from a grant. And in that case, the scope change might be more difficult with the grantor. So we kind of have to also see what they're willing to even accept there, because this project has gone back a couple times to them. So I think there is also the possibility that we might end up kind of being like, you be in your lane and we'll be in ours, but ideally there's more money sharing if we're allowed to do it, if we can have her adjust her specs.
Okay, that's Jan. Sorry, are you good with that, Doug? Good with that, Doug?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, so I have Jan and then Beth and then Alice.
I'm losing Heather, she's walking. The bridge work, didn't that include a little dock for where AA is going to attach?
Yeah, I thought I had a junction.
I thought her plans included the junction.
There is, but it's basically just a landing. It's a landing on the bridge ramp where AA would attach when it gets built.
No, I know, I'm worried that trying to now get AA done before we get the bridge done is going to affect things like the grant and hold everything back. So if there's some way we can build the bridge and then build AA to the junction.
And so that's what we would evaluate, right? I'm gonna sit with Diana, take a look at the grant, see if what we're proposing would even be considered. From there, see where she's at with her specs, bring her what we have from the boardwalk, talk about if it's even possible to make changes at this time. What costs will that incur having to go back to Associated Engineering to get that reevaluated? And then from there, if there is an opportunity for partnership, get it to council in the next 2-3 weeks, so that she can still hit her deadline of June 15th. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we need to explore it. So that's
Oh, no,
what
I
we'll do.
get it, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if
Yeah.
for whatever reason she's saying, no, I gotta go, I
Yeah.
gotta get the bridge stuff done. Maybe she can still look at using the previous way of doing the new way of doing it to save some money.
Yes.
But she can still build a junction and then hopefully we can figure out a way to build AA into it.
Yeah, and depending on how that grant is written, if she's able to adjust the specs, save the money, the grant may allow her to just
Yep.
give it to us and off we go.
Beth?
From what I remember, the grant, it was actually extended until December 2023. So there's quite a lot of time, and the grant itself was for connectivity. And so AA would fit right into a connectivity theme as well as right across, but it would be, because that is really a key for dispersing people and connecting the different parts of the boardwalk. So it seems there's time from the grant, and you can check that, of course.
Yeah.
And the theme of the grant fits, it is connectivity, so it does fit this really well.
Thanks, Beth. Alice?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, similar to what Beth said, like I've looked into that grant quite a bit, and it's the COVID stream resilience funding. And it was applied for, and the goal was to connect the bridge to the rest of the boardwalk in order to keep people moving around and more dispersed and be able to social distance more. So if we could incorporate even more functional parts of the boardwalk into that, with my familiarity with the grant, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be adjusted. And like Beth said, we have until December 2023.
Yeah, I think the only concern that I have is that they may not be accepting further changes to projects now, especially as COVID winds down. So, but yeah, we'll explore it, and if they're willing to accept it, why not try? All right. So next, so we're all in agreement. AA stays at the top of the list. Okay. Next item is the tower. So the tower is very dependent on what we decide to do with it as to whether the Water Act is going to apply. And, you know, that ranges from everything from changing its location to changing how it's built. Are we going to, for example, suspend it from trees or something crazy like that so that it doesn't affect the wetland? Okay. I know, yawn, okay? I couldn't think of a better example.
A tree fort is a cool idea.
Yes, I love a good tree fort. Yeah, so how does everybody feel about the tower being there? My understanding from the group, just to kind of set the foundation, was that, you know, this was a tower that was named and built for someone who cared about this area. And it's important to the community, not just those around this table, that it be restored. And so that's kind of my inkling or guess as to why the tower shows up this close to the top of the list. Does anybody want to speak to the tower?
So I personally came here after the tower. Well, I've never had a chance to see the tower, but I've seen pictures from it, and the view is spectacular. So I would be reluctant to move the location just based on the view. And I've also heard, I'm a musician, I've heard other musicians talk about how they sat up there and played music, and the way it resonates off the lake is really quite magical on a quiet evening. So there may be, I would be reluctant to move it unless someone could make a good case for another slot.
Beth?
I guess similar to that, like really when the tower was up, it was just magical. You could be up there and you're not interfering. You could watch the beavers and watch the ducks and birds fly around. And really, you'd probably need to have another Water Act amendment or application, but you know how to do that now. But I would just reestablish it the way it was. And then you'd have pilings right for those the front support beams. But yeah, I think I would be in support of just putting the Rocky Warren Tower back up. If you have to apply for a Water Act, great, we know how to do the process. And they're, you know, obviously AER is familiar with the whole project as a whole as well. And it was there before, so I can't see it really being a difficult application.
So I have a question about the prioritization. So is this a prioritization of funds or is this a prioritization of focus?
So currently it's focus. Later in the meeting, we have that closed session. And based on, I'm trying to just choose my words, based on the direction that comes out of there, we may have prioritized based on item and then reprioritize based on available funding and cost.
Because they're important considerations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a delay in getting that Water Act approval. Jan?
Do we have an estimated price for the tower?
So that one I do not have a price for because it's not under the same kind of piles decking. And the last kind of conversation that we had with AP as well as Hans about it, it was going to require some significant engineering. So I have no idea what the cost on that's going to be at this point. But one of the learnings from the Water Act approval process last time is to meet AEP on site first, describe what we want to achieve to them, have them give us some feedback with our engineers and our environmental folks there, and kind of really do a more collaborative process so that AEP has less questions as we're going through those approval phases. So with respect to approval, it would likely be beneficial that we decide as a group if we want to do an additional approval for an AEP approval, sorry, Alberta Environment and Parks approval for just the tower, because I think that one's so much more specialized than the rest of the boardwalk and kind of a different application for the rest of the sections of the boardwalk. We would want to start the tower application soon if it's staying at a number 2, because we probably won't actually be able to tackle it until next year.
I mean, you
Sorry,
guys.
sorry, I have to go to Doug first.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go to Doug and then Alice.
Well, question for Heather. So there's 4 columns underneath the tower. Did you find out if all or some of them are applicable to AEP? As in if we could pull back some columns to remove that approval, or are all of them applicable to the approval?
Yeah. So the previous conversation that we had with AP, we were told that because where the kind of base of the tower and there's like a ramp that goes up, because that all affects sort of the hydrology of the wetland with respect to runoff, that at his first glance, all of those pillars would apply, the whole tower itself. However, and that's kind of when we started being a little bit facetious about hanging it from trees and things like that to avoid the impact to the wetland. But I would be really interested to see what, you know, some engineers or creative folks might come up with.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Alice?
Sorry about that. I
No,
didn't
that's
see
that's
it.
okay.
The bridge ended up not needing, or ended up being put in under the current maintenance application. Isn't that right? Is it possible that the same thing would happen with the tower?
It's,
You don't think it's likely? That's okay.
yeah, they told us it's not like, I mean, it's
Okay.
possible, but they said it probably wouldn't get approved as an amendment, because the reason that they think it's slanting is because the piles aren't appropriate, and I have no idea how that should be re-engineered.
So the order or something like that would be, like, we as a group would kind of decide what we want.
Yeah.
And then we would try to get someone to design it, and then we apply to AEP, and then we seek out funding from
Yeah.
the grant, because you need it to be shovel ready. Is that
Yeah,
sort of the?
yeah, pending all moving parts. Yeah, so typically we would maybe take a site visit, go out there, what are our thoughts around the table? Then I might invite one of our engineers and our environmental folks that have been helping with our boardwalk, everything boardwalk related. Once they kind of, you know, think about it, then we would invite AP to the table, do another site visit, and have them direct us on what kind of application. Now, depending on who we get out there, some of them might say, oh no, if you do it this way and this way, just do an amendment to your maintenance application. That itself also takes time. But yeah, I think the collaborative approach is definitely the way that we should go forward, especially on these kind of weirder ones.
Jan and then Doug.
I guess I like the tower, don't get me wrong, but I find it hard to think of prioritizing it when we don't have any idea on how much it will cost. And so that affects, maybe some people might be swayed to move that down the priority list and move something else up while we get our beans in a row on the tower, like ducks in a row, on how much the tower is going to be. So just putting that thought out there.
One thing that I would suggest there is if the tower is obviously important to us and important to the community, perhaps we can show that that is still a priority by starting that AEP process.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of parallel to
Sorry,
our
yeah.
other prioritizations.
Yep.
I can make a note of that here.
Like some of these Water Act things, we're given a fairly long time to work with them, right?
Yeah, so our maintenance approval is 10 years.
So I'm just wondering, can't we just like figure everything that we're gonna need and start the process now? And even if it's low down on the list, at least we got it done.
We could. I just think that the tower is so vastly different than the rest of the boardwalk that it will probably require its own approval.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that we could kind of start, bringing in our folks from Associated Engineering, start making moves to book people from AEP to come in. Then we know what we're building there, right? And we can sort out the rest of.
Devil's advocate, if I may, if you bring in all these different groups, why don't you bring them in and show them all the different, like there's three things here that we may need Water Act. Why don't you show them all at once?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can do that.
I'm just knowing, it's just an idea.
Which other ones are water?
Wheelchair accessibility and.
Oh, that one was just wheelchair accessibility. I just couldn't remember.
I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't remember from the conversation what that
Water
meant,
Act,
because to
okay,
my
so
knowledge.
there's a lot there. My apologies.
Yeah. You don't have to apologize.
No, I misread that.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to mark the tower as kind of an action item for me to perhaps start bringing some folks in to talk about what's possible for that area. Can I get a motion?
I'll motion
I
that.
have a question.
Oh,
Oops. Okay, go ahead, Alice.
Okay. So the Water Act approval. It's gone.
If you want a minute to recollect, I had Doug and I missed Doug and I feel bad now.
Okay.
Sorry, Doug.
Oh, I was just going to make a comment on the tower there. Heather, thanks for clarifying that each one of those columns was applicable for the Water Act approval. So with that in mind, I don't think I'd recommend looking at an alternative solution that span is too long for any sort of cantilever design. That's not going to be ridiculously expensive. It's very likely what your engineer is going to recommend is just going to be a screw ball foundation. So you might as well just start with the Water Act approval.
Yeah, I remember what I was gonna say.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Alice.
no, I was like, if I kind of agree with Jan, we get the ball rolling and say it ends up being a slightly more expensive item and we want to prioritize other sections, like it's great, we can just table it and yeah, until we're ready. We'll have it ready to go. Then we get.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to go about it. Get the Water Act approval in place, and then depending on what we have for funding, the group can decide, well, is it more important to get some of those closed sections opened up, or is it more important to get that tower rebuilt? So, and if, so I get the maintenance one's 10 years, would a construction approval be 10 years too? Could it be that open?
Oh, I don't remember specifically, but I think we can combine. So like, let's say the tower requires a different kind of maintenance than let's say the rest of the boardwalk, then we can at that point extend the length of that approval to accommodate the maintenance that's different from what we have in the boardwalk. But I'm like only 75% sure.
Yeah. No worries. Jan?
No.
I'll let you a motion you wanted to make.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. I'd like to make a motion that Heather and or companies start the process of Water Act
Sure.
For the tower.
for the tower. for R.
Okay, so there is a proposed motion, so we want to keep comments and questions to that for now. So, Alice?
Do we want to do the design first? Like, we have to have the design done first? I'm not so clear.
So that's part of the process. So I'll bring in the engineers, they'll go out, they'll give us an idea. They might even give us some drawings, and then we have AEP come in, do a site visit, look at that and go, hard no, or absolutely submit your approval.
Okay, so that's what this motion means, is you're gonna.
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that.
Yeah, okay.
Or soft no?
Or soft no, an in
It just
between
looks
gray area
great. We
no.
just would like you to change this and this, and then it would be perfect.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally making soft no a thing. That's great. Love that.
Yeah, and that and that and that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, comments or questions on the motion? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I was just gonna say, my question would be then, so the design of the tower, we're going to basically maintain a structure with the same viewpoint access, same length, same span as the existing, that's the intention.
Yeah, that's a good question for the group, I guess. So kind of similar to what used to be there? Are we looking for Eiffel Tower or what are we looking for? Beth?
Yeah, no, I think similar to what was there. It worked really well and it fit in there. It's not too ostentatious or anything, but it does the job, so.
I was hoping for feedback from someone who'd been out there and stood on it and looked on it before it'd been condemned.
Oh, I think most will I have.
Yeah, I was lots of times. Yeah, it was great. Trevor?
I'd like to just agree with what Beth was saying, keep it a similar structure. I'd be concerned about having anything more extravagant, having a further impact on the land. You know, I like how it was tucked away before. And if you're looking at a cantilever system, you'd be like, taking out that whole area of trees just to have a substructure. So, okay, sorry, that's all I have.
Joe?
I would agree with both Beth and Trevor, because like I was surprised when they took that thing away, because like I don't really pay attention. I do my little rounds at the Beaver Boardwalk, go up the ramp, and I see this little stub. I was like, it'd be nice to bring it back, nostalgia feeling, you know. But same thing, if it was a bit more extravagant, I feel like we shouldn't take away the attention from the Beaver and Beaver Dam. Just keep it on the sideline, kind of thing. Because it was a perfect picture to like take pictures of beavers and how they were like, you know, how they did things. So yeah.
So, oh, yeah, go ahead, Alice.
So the intention would be then like we wouldn't be taking down any other trees or anything like that.
Chad, have you been out there recently to see what the growth, if any, has been in the 3-4 years that it's been closed? Any concerns there?
It's nothing major. If we had to take down a tree or two, I don't think it's anything too invasive.
Okay, so it sounds like we have an informal consensus of the group that the committee wants to see a tower structure that's similar to the one that used to be there. So I'm just gonna ask the group if there's any opposition to that at all. Just raise your hand and we can make a motion and get the consensus of the group through motion. But if there's no opposition, I think Heather has a good understanding of what the committee's looking for. So is there anyone opposed to having it similar to what was there before? Okay, so that's the consensus of the group. Any other comments or questions on the motion before we call it to question? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate. Okay, opposed? Okay, that is carried unanimously.
Okay,
Back to you, Heather.
on to our next section. We have W, X, and T. So just keeping in mind when you're looking at this, X is in good condition, which is yellow. So take a moment to just kind of situate yourselves on the map.
X and
So that's
T-
just, oh, sorry.
X and T are fair.
X and T are, pardon me, W and T are fair, X is good.
So that's to say that each section individually had a prioritization of 13. Like the
Nope.
same,
Because somebody literally put forward, I want W, X, and T considered at the same time.
Oh.
And then you all voted on that as one. So it's
Okay.
like if we reassign W and X and T a new name. Just,
Yes.
Yeah, I just to clarify, like, 2 rows down, there's W and T by themselves.
yeah,
And so.
and then a few more down, there's north-south connection, which I don't really know what that.
that's on the
Yeah.
bridge.
But I just, is there a practical thing in terms of access? Like, to me, W and T are really would be needing to be done because of their condition. But is there a practical thing to do X at the same time for access, I guess?
And that's something I wanted to leave up to the group because each of you did bring your own priority. So somebody brought a priority of W and T only. And then I think, or I don't know who it was, but they brought an additional priority of W, X, and T. And I think what we see here is that someone is saying, well, X is in okay condition. So like, do we really need to do it? But then somebody else looked at that and went, well, if we're gonna do W and T, we might as well do X at the same time. Because it's all part of that kind of main connection around the Beaver pond or Beaver Dam there.
Yeah, so I don't, not that, I think it's, what am I trying to get? When we prioritize sections and think about the concept of redeveloping them or maintaining them, I think it's important to, I know they're segmented on the map for condition purposes, but from an experience purpose, again, it's one experience, right? Like the visitor who's going to be walking that section from BV to, to the end of T, right? That's, to me, one contiguous experience along the edge of the Beaver Dam. So in turn, when we go to think about prioritizing those projects, then thinking about them as a contiguous experience. Otherwise, if you have X being in really great shape, but W being in poor shape, then if we just pick them up a bit at a time, then you run into these problems that you've already addressed with CC and DD being maintained and now harder to get at the other sections. So, just being a bit strategic in terms of like experience and doing large contiguous sections in one go, as opposed to just WT. I don't know. I know they're segmented for simplicity here, but I mean that's just personally how I see it, right? Like,
So I'll go to Doug and then Alice.
Seems like access is best if you consider them all the same thing, which is what I assume what the intention was with there, because if you just do W and T, which are the worst ones, well, you can never get to X again easily because you just fix CC and now you fix W and T, and now how are you ever going to get to the one in the middle? But if you basically do all three at the same time, you come in from the trail on the east side, you rip up TWX, and then you start your way backwards to fix them all.
Alice and then Jan.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, we were just talking about AA and how it ties into the bridge. It almost seems like if we can do everything BB, Y, AA, X, W, and T at the same time, like if you can do that all in one winter, say, then your access issues really become a lot more minimized, and maybe we can even do V and U, but if that's getting to be too much at once, I don't know if there's a possibility to maybe even do hard decking on T just so that you can get access to U and V later, like.
Chad actually has a really good solution for access to U and V.
Okay.
Yeah, where we build a trail off the trail here.
Okay.
And go through the bush.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea. It was brought to the table here at the meetings, but
Oh.
yeah.
What was that idea?
So the the gravel trail there, you access you from the trail, just kind of through the bush
Yeah,
there.
but that was raised as an option and no one wanted it.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea.
I think he's saying just to rebuild
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
uh,
Yeah,
U and V, so then you don't have to go and
Right.
damage any existing boardwalk.
I got you. Thanks.
Uh,
A bio brick is good.
Yeah, we're gonna take 5 minutes, yeah. We'll take 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 6:55.
There is something out at the door again. I'm not sure what it is.
Alrighty. Heather,
Yes.
so we're still talking about WXVT, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
It's an interesting discussion. Because when you start talking about working backwards to protect what you just did. It just brings into the question of, because X is in good condition, so from what I'm hearing, people are talking about ripping it out and redoing it all. Even though it's in good condition, which, by the legend means that the town people could go in there and take care of it for a while. But then if you're doing that, then why aren't you doing BB? Because that's part of that continuous walkway that Kevin just spoke about, and it's in good condition also, but if you're doing this whole backwards march to the south, then you're gonna start at BB and march southward and pile the whole thing. So just food for thought. I guess for a second there, I was kind of wondering, well, wait a second. I mean, believe me, I want the best Beaver boardwalk we can get, but if the legend says that it's good, and that means that the town people can straighten it out and level it, then maybe we don't need to worry about it. But then so I guess let me ask the question, Chad, what does good mean? Like, how long is that section going to be good for if you continue to go in there and straighten her out?
That's a tough one because it changes year to year almost, right? So it's good right now, and as far as like what good entails, it's just straightening and leveling. So we've all walked that section. We know it's relatively solid. So I mean, but for how long? That's a fair question. I can't give you a definitive answer on it.
So just to continue my train of thought there, and I'll leave it, but I mean, I think maybe as a group, we need to come to the decision that even if it's good, it's still in the lineup for being replaced, in which case we get back into that whole, if it's connected and if we're going in one direction, then we should consider the whole thing. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Alice?
Yeah, to follow up with that, I'm just crunching the numbers and I feel like I've done it 3 times and I feel like I'm doing it wrong because section X by itself would only be around just over $12,000 with that 166 meters. Am I doing the math? Is my calculator wrong? Like it just feels like it's like that's like we're in a whole different ballpark from what I thought we were going to be costing here. So including sections like BB and X, like if they're only, it's going to be like $20,000 to add them in. It's not nearly as difficult of a decision.
So just keep in mind, if you're looking at just X, it's whatever the price is per meter plus at least 20,000 for mob and demob.
Even more reason
Yeah,
to do BB.
to do the whole
W
thing,
and
right?
T all
Yeah.
together.
So just to throw a little bit more confusion in there too, U and V, they didn't rank real high when we stuck all the stickers up on there. But in terms of prioritization, the group has to consider, do we want to spend money rebuilding sections that are currently good, currently open, currently usable, and then have sections that are currently closed remain closed? Or is the priority, does that switch the priorities a little bit?
That's what I was thinking when I was gonna raise the same question. To me, that whole closed part is bad. Just makes it look so awful.
Doug?
I'm happiest just to stick with the priority rankings. I mean, that was basically us throwing all our Post-its on the wall. And I mean, that seems to be the most democratic method in terms of who prefers what to what.
The other thing I kind of want to bring to people's attention is if we redid the so like, for example, we have W and T on here twice and it got a score of 9. So if I add that to the 13 for W, X, and T, and then also looking at U and V, combining those, that would be 16. So that would bump this up to the 3rd priority, theoretically. So if you, because somebody had just said just section U, right? And that got 8 points. So if I combine that, then we would be looking at section AA, then the tower, WXT, and then probably UV. So that's the other thing I can go back through and do is any of the combined sections, total their number and reallocate that priority, because that would be more in line with kind of what we're seeing in terms of closures. And then we could look at, oh, well, does it actually maybe make sense to do U and V here pretty quick because we can get that easy access through the back.
So I like that, and I would put forward a motion for her to do that.
We're moving to combine the sections that are on the prioritization list multiple times. Okay. I guess my only question would be, what do you do in the one where it's section V and W? It's got 4 votes down, I don't know,
You give 2 to each.
near the bottom.
Yeah.
2 of them go to B and 2 go to W. Sure.
Divide it.
Yeah, that's probably what I would have done, actually.
Yeah.
So are there comments, thoughts, questions about that, Alice?
I just feel like BB is kind of dangling in this scenario.
Yeah, BP is not even on there.
Yeah, that's my only concern.
Is it like really awesome?
It's just continuous.
It's this little section right here.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it doesn't seem to pop up here, so it's in great shape for.
Well,
I don't think it fell onto our
I
radar.
don't think anyone would
Yeah.
say I prioritize this tiny little section.
Yeah.
It just.
That should definitely go with the others.
Yeah, so you could also, somebody, if they wanted to, they could make a motion to add section BB to one of the other sections where it makes sense, and then the group could weigh in on if they supported that. or
I'd like to
not.
make a motion that we add BB to X, so it's BBX.
Yeah.
We're gonna need a Star Wars did.
But wait, we have 2 motions.
Yeah,
on the
so,
floor.
I know.
yeah, we actually have to deal with the first motion first, and then we could do another one regarding BB. So I'm just saying that that's how it could be addressed, though. Doug and then Alice. Go ahead, Doug.
One potential idea, which is obviously there's a couple of duplicate items in here, or maybe items that could be condensed, and you also have 2 new members of the committee. You may want to consider cleaning up the list a bit and simply re-voting on things, although that would delay everything by a month.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Alice?
Can you just clarify the motion? I'm just not sure what's on the table.
I put forward a motion. I would almost like to put my second motion first. Am I allowed to do that?
And withdraw your first motion. That's
I'd like to
fine.
withdraw my first emotion.
Your one emotion that you have.
Let's see if it's Vulcan and then I'm dead.
So is there any opposition to Jan withdrawing his motion? Seeing no opposition, that motion is withdrawn.
So I'll put forward a motion to add BB to section X to be named whatever. Just name it. What makes more sense? Name it X.
Can I name it BB.
Sure.
X like we did on here.
And you,
No,
and do you
because it
want
would
it, do you want it added to the WXT section?
To me, they're not the same though, because W is good, whereas the other ones are fair or whatever.
We just have to hammer out what his motion is, and then I'll go to the group for comments or thoughts. We just need to know what you want to do, so we know what the motion is.
I wanted to include BB into this so that it doesn't get left out.
Mhm.
And so because it's in good condition as well as X, I thought we just joined those to make one segment.
Yeah, so just call it EDX or something.
So
It's a continuous thing.
does that make sense to you, Heather?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Heather says she understands.
Well, no, you should understand. Oh, I mean,
I'm just trying to figure out how it fits into the prioritization list, because there is WXT there already.
I know, and what Alice pointed out is like BB was never even considered, and
No,
maybe it's
I-
because people didn't, it was not, it's not as obvious as U and V and TWX, it's just a little segment there.
Yeah.
But if we're replacing good, then it doesn't make sense to leave it stranded.
Yeah, I understand the reasoning, that part I get. It's the capturing and then putting it onto the prioritization list where it would fit and how it affects the other ones. Go ahead, go ahead, Alice.
I'm just not sure we need to actually combine the sections. I think all we need to do is just add it to the priority to the list, I think. Because then we can keep the map the same. I'm not sure the
Sure,
reasoning would
whatever,
actually
it doesn't.
like,
So
Mhm.
in my mind, the map wouldn't change. But you notice here in the prioritization how we have some sections that are WNT. So what I would do then, because BB got no votes, but what I'm hearing here is a consensus that we need to include that. So then wherever we have X, also include B, is kind of what I'm gonna put into the sheet.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Jan? Are we on the
Sure.
same page?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
6.5.
That's what I kind of.
Just a counter thought to where Jan was going with that one, but you got one section, XWT, and which is basically included so you don't strand a section in the middle. An alternative section would be including BB with AA, Y, and BB. And then you have basically two similar length segments that could be prioritized. You'd have BBY, AA, and then XWT, and both of them could be worked on kind of as a little group unto each other.
I think it's 6.5.
well,
Okay, thanks, Doug. Alice?
yeah, I tend to agree, because I mean, like that could end up being really important for access if you ended up being able to do AAYB with the bridge and then do TWX separate, right? Like, or maybe you can bring it under the bridge, and so it is by itself, and then you can include it with TWX. Maybe like you just leave a little bit of flexibility there.
Heather?
Just a reminder that this prioritization will be updated as we receive more information. So when we start getting actual quotes for things, when we understand what kind of pot of money we might have, when we perhaps all of a sudden a grant comes across my desk and I'm like, this one's for Boardwalk. We can move these priorities later. So I think putting it in with X for now is fine. And then let's say we find out from Diana that we are gonna get a go on the AA, then we might come back to the table and go, are we doing Y and BB at the same time? Right? So we can move those things around as we go. But for the purpose of, we haven't included BB here, I think we're okay with Jan's motion to just get it into the chart so that we don't lose sight of it.
That probably simplifies things too. Thank you for that. Okay, so sorry, who's got the motion? Trevor, do you have it?
Kind of died out there. Motion to add sections BD with X title. We never got to it. So.
I don't think it needs a title because I'm just gonna throw it in the chart.
Okay. Motion to add sections BD with X.
To
onto
the
the chart.
prioritization chart.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Alice?
Do we need to add Y to AA? You don't think so? Okay, never mind then. Well,
I guess
So
it'd be
that
YC.
that could get moved separately if somebody had a thought that they wanted to do that. And then it could be considered.
Right now, why am I allowed to speak?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Why is good? Like, and that's where I think, you know, we got caught up into this really nice coloring. But if good doesn't mean anything, it just means that it's going to be replaced just like everything else. And maybe we should get rid of, like, because my first response to Alice was going to be, well, section Y is good and section AA is poor. So that's what makes the difference between the two. But I mean, if that doesn't matter in the big picture, because we're replacing the whole dang thing, then.
But it does matter because we have to pretend like there's a finite bottom line.
I know, I'm
Because
just,
there is.
I'm being the devil's advocate to answer her.
Yeah, because the way the conversation's going, we're getting back towards the whole thing's a priority. Which is what we were trying to move away from, to figure out which sections were most important to the committee and the community to make sure that they were fixed up first. Alice?
It seems like what's coming out of this conversation is that this whole area around the Beaver Pond, which is, I believe, what Rick first built. I think that was actually the first part of the boardwalk that was built. It's like that is seemingly just what we're all focusing in on, right? It's like that section around the Beaver Boardwalk to the bridge. That's what we're all. That seems like that whole bit is the priority, and then the rest of it comes later. Maybe.
Okay, so just for the committee, there is a motion. We kind of have to deal with that motion, and I don't want to stifle conversation, but we can't let it get too far away either. So if we could just keep it to the motion for now.
Motion is still just the X and B.
Yeah. So if the committee has any comments about Jan's motion specifically regarding adding BB to X, we'll talk about that, and then other conversation can happen after. Doug?
So for simplicity's sake, I'd probably suggest maybe I'm changing my mind, but how about we just don't include the good sections then? Then it just makes it easier. And if there happens to be more money than we think there is, then absolutely you can add another section onto another one to improve access. But I mean, if we assume we just don't want to replace the good sections because they're good, well, then that just makes it a lot easier. And honestly, if the worst comes to worst, you just knock off a 10-foot section of boardwalk on DD, and then you drive through there, and then you can get to BB and Y from that way anyway.
Okay, yep, I appreciate that. Thank you, Doug. Sorry, what was that, Jan?
Nothing.
Nothing, okay. Okay, so any other comments, questions on the motion? Okay, seeing nothing, all those in favor of adding section BB to section X indicate. Opposed? Sorry, Doug, what was your vote? You're opposed? And Tom?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think the vote happened.
Trevor, did you get that?
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, and 3 against.
Go ahead, Jan.
Well, I think this gets back to one of our first meetings where we had one person vote no, and it ended up playing an interesting part later on. So I would love to hear why you voted no.
Because my thinking is in alignment with what Doug said. If sections are good and we have a finite pot of money, I don't think that's the best use of it, is to rebuild sections that are already good.
Okay, fair enough. So I would, because what I was about to say before, but we were kind of pressed to pass the motion is, I think we are, like, the one thing when we did our prioritizations, we never considered this whole aspect of trying not to trample on what's already been built. And, you know, maybe that would have changed our thought pattern. So, because I kind of agree, I'm leaning towards agreeing to this whole notion that maybe we shouldn't be worrying about good sections right now. But I'm just saying, I'm just speaking out loud. It really changes the way this coloring and stuff is gonna look if good doesn't mean anything really.
So I think holistically, when you're looking at prioritization of something like this, the first round, that's really an exercise that we do so that everyone can kind of make their case about what's important to them, right? Because we did a community kind of survey on what's important. They said the whole boardwalk's important. Great. So then we come to the table and everybody's going to look at this problem differently, right? So that's where we start. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is as soon as I come back with information about section AA and maybe a little bit of update on the tower, and now I've combined, you know, scores for the W's and the T's and things that are duplicated, I think the pathway will become a lot more clear to us. And it's designed that way for us to continually use this as a working document to guide us. So I think even in the interest of time, you guys have done a really good chunk of what did come out as our top priorities. So I would ask, like, let me walk away, restructure this, bring it to our next meeting, and then we can carry on from there because we do have a couple other items that we need to get to today. And I think that we're just going to further kind of compound the issues we're experiencing right now without updating the list. Thoughts?
Thank you. So committee, thoughts on that? Is there anything that's burning and pressing in the prioritization list that we want to make sure that that gets hit on tonight?
But we need a motion for her to do that, don't we?
I haven't, she's gone.
To do a restacking of the priorities.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good approach. I think, yeah, because there's a lot of flexibility and like you say, there's a lot of moving parts here. So, and we may be changing our mind 2 meetings down the road because we have the information. So I think you've got the flexibility to restructure this, and we could go.
Any other thoughts, comments? Yep, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like when I was speaking earlier about considering, you know, patterns of use or whatever, I mean, I wasn't intending to complicate matters. If anything, more likely, it's just, when we're thinking about this in terms of like, you know, providing like admin and council opportunity to seek out grants and funding and stuff. I mean, thinking about the boardwalk replacement strategically, because, you know, piece by piece is again good for asset reporting, maintenance needs, condition reporting, things like that. But in terms of, you know, grant writing and actual replacement of large projects, they don't happen piece by piece, and it'll happen in a large section that benefits visitors, people that are using the place and are going to be of interest to a grant, you know, writer or something like that, or, you know, so that's all. So just, you know, grouping things BD with access is one nice thing to do, but, you know, just if it's strategic, maybe it's BD with what one day, right? So, yeah, so but that's the intent is, even though you look at the sections, just keeping that frame of mind in place so that jump on opportunities, that's all.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, yeah, I mean, if section BB was in terrible shape, nobody would ever agree to an investment of $4,000 to replace section BB. It would be a good chunk for, you know, $150,000, right? So that's good. Everybody focus back on the big picture. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
And that's
Yeah.
what I meant, sorry.
I'll just throw it out there, like, even once the restacking gets done, Y is never going to appear anywhere on it, so.
Yeah.
There is no Y in our priorities.
In the
that's
priority
true, yeah.
list. But like I said, if I get a go ahead from Diana to do AA, then we're having a different conversation about why, to Kevin's point, right? So it's really about bringing little chunks of information as we receive it and then reevaluating our plan every time we have a new piece of information.
Yeah, because that,
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
the whole mode demo comes into that as well, right? Yeah, so you can save yourself $20,000 down in the future by spending a little bit, and then that's gone too, that expense too.
Tom and then Alice.
I guess to Chad's point about things being good, you're a winter away from something else become a priority. So I guess we have to be flexible anyway. And as far as having to go back through stuff we've just fixed and taking the deck apart, it's not the end of the world. It was done during the initial construction we just saw. So I guess we have to just look at it as what is possible and not try to let the contingencies overwhelm us, I guess, is where I'm at.
Thanks, Tom. Alice? Okay. All right, is there anything further, committee, before we move away from boardwalk, or sorry, boardwalk section prioritization? No? Okay. Okay, so that will bring us to 4.3, 5-year project plan, draft one. Did you want to, oh no, you went through that already?
That's
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
another step.
Okay, so that brings us to discussion item 5.1, potential funding, which is a closed session agenda item. So we need a motion to go into closed session.
I have to make a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you.
Session.
Thank you, Jan. All those in favor? Okay. Okay, committee, we're now at a closed session. Are there any motions coming out of closed session?
Make the motion for committee to direct administration to proceed as discussed in closed session.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Committee, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, committee. Brings us to discussion item 5.2, roundtable updates. Let's start with Trevor just because it's easier to go that way.
I've got nothing to add.
Okay, Beth?
Oh, okay, so we're just going around with whatever.
Yeah, just roundtable discussion, anything relevant to the
Oh,
boardwalk.
yeah, because I'd asked for an update on the bridge, just to, like, where, I think we've sort of covered some of that off, but where Diana is. And if we just sort of, yeah, what the status of that whole project is.
That's the bridge ramp project.
Yeah, so I was able to connect with her, and as you guys know, they are kind of going with two separate tenders, so it's being rewritten currently. It is planned to be posted on June 15th. That's kind of where they're at right now. It's in the hands of our engineers. And I said, are you expecting any delays on this? And she said, right now, no. However, I'm about to walk into her office and maybe there might be some delays. So that's where that's at right now, scheduled for June 15th.
Yeah.
The tender is gonna go out on June 15th?
Yes, the new one. Yeah, the tender will go out for applications on June 15th.
Yeah.
We're getting, that's late.
Did Diana indicate how long it was going to be open for?
She did not. Was that part of the motion from council? I can't remember.
There was this, I don't
Minimum.
remember if it was part of the formal motion, but the intent was that it to be open for significantly longer than it was last time. Yeah.
It won't come to us first, it'll just go out.
The plan right now was for it to go out. Notwithstanding a motion, it will just go out.
As part of it going out, from experience with my work, could the town or would the town be interested in doing a bit of a marketing blitz to get some local interest from local contractors? Just from my personal discussions, a lot of companies don't follow the typical postings. It's been kind of frustrating in my work, so it's maybe if the town did a better job of making sure that it's impossible to miss, I guess.
Just a sidebar, do these contractors, do they subscribe to the notification that every time we post a bid, it goes right to their email?
I guess not, because they weren't aware of other postings. I
Oh, okay.
No, but this was raised, oh, sorry.
Ed Beth and Jan.
I mean,
I was just gonna make a comment. I just, every time I'm out there, I still meet people that just look at the bridge and say it doesn't belong there. And I just, they're right. But, you know, like we're this far down the road, but I guess I still feel in a way that our committee could have maybe pressed Diana a bit harder to at least include the option of the costing, not saying this is what should be done, but the cost of removing the bridge and replacing the simple footbridge. But we didn't, and council made their decisions without that option fully, I think, in front of them. So I just, we'll say that one more time.
So I'm gonna take the opportunity to say one more time too, because this keeps coming up, that
Yeah.
that option did not come to council. It has on at least 3 separate occasions. And council hasn't given direction to administration to pursue removing the bridge any further than what came to council.
The costing wasn't, I remember the one meeting, that would have been the standing committee last year. And the mayor had to press them 3 times to get a cost, so it wasn't put in the list at the time, and they finally just blurted out a cost. I think it was, I've forgotten his name.
Yes, because it wasn't an option that council gave administration to come back with numbers on. There wasn't a will of council to explore removing the bridge, so it wasn't researched by administration. Anyway.
Okay, that's interesting, yeah.
Wait,
we're on round table
Sorry,
right now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are on roundtable and we're talking about the bridge ramp update thing.
Yeah,
And that's important that we stay on that because we had a discussion earlier today that has some bearing on Diana's work that she's going to be doing for when that comes out. So the question about whether it comes back to this group, I think that needs to be explored a little bit further.
I think
On
it's
whether
really
what comes
dependent.
back to the group.
Well, there Alice asked the question if the tender was going to come back to this group for review before it went out.
I think if there is an opportunity for us to include AA, then absolutely that tender comes back here. If for some reason we can't coordinate the projects as one, then I think that ship has sailed. I mean, I can always ask,
But the other component of that, if I may, was Doug's suggestion about making the specifications a little bit less robust so that they could be more in line with the sections that Fine Line just did, which would reduce the cost. But that's going to have to be hammered out before the tender goes out.
and so what I'm thinking is when I chat with Diana, it's likely going to include some of her, like Debbie and Winston, to see if, you know, what's it going to cost to send this back to the engineers? Do we have the money for that? Do we have the timeline for that? Are there some sort of restriction that I'm not even thinking of as to why, right? So I have so many questions. I'll have to chat with her. And unfortunately, I probably won't be till Monday. But as soon as I have a bit of an update, we might do something similar to what we did when we determined that the sections that we wanted to do this year, just have a special meeting so that we can make sure we're hitting our timelines.
Alice?
I'm just confused about something you said, because you said the option to remove came back to council at least 3 times. But then you said that council explicitly.
Sorry, that's
Didn't
not
ask
what we're
for-
talking about. We have to stay on the
We have to
agenda.
stay,
Tom.
okay, well, okay, I'll ask you in an email.
So anything else from roundtable?
no, I just, that was good. Heather answered my question, and we'd kind of gone over that before earlier, and it would be a good it is if the, you know, I think I mentioned before, I found that always as a group to have the bridge separated from the boardwalk repair and maintenance really awkward. So I like your approach of bringing some new this idea to Diana about including potential cost savings using what Fine Line was doing. So yeah, I think that's a good move. But no, I just wanted the update in the bridge, and that's what my comment is. I'm done.
Yeah,
So I would say that it's great to see so much water in the system again, because it was so low there for a long time. Still interesting that the dam is leaking water from where it burst last year. Hopefully that gets,
They will, like, that's probably rotting underneath by now, because that dam is like, what, 20 years old or so, so it's likely that stuff is rotting, but they will fix that.
Mhm.
That will
Yeah.
be fixed.
from the recreation side of things, I'll say that it's still talkable from the bikers that they can't wait for the ramps to come in. The bridge to make it easier for them. And I would say, because it always comes up, is that the people I associate with and the large number of them want nothing done with the bridge at this point. And so, put it there. That's it.
thanks, Jan. So just before I go to Kevin, the bridge is a topic of discussion, fairly in-depth, even though it wasn't on the agenda. I want to remind you guys, if you want to take a look at the bridge again, if you think that the committee should talk about it and make a recommendation, all it takes is putting a motion out there. If the motion is supported by the committee, then there can be a bridge discussion and there can be recommendations that come out of it. Because this is a committee, though, everything has to happen by consensus. So if that's something that the committee wants to talk about, so it's no problem. It just takes a motion and then it's on the agenda. Kevin?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the only things I would say is I had kind of a fun couple of exchanges with big tourists out there lately, like just when I go out for a walk or something, just kind of fun. Maybe they sense I'm a local, if I'm a local. I don't know. Including a couple of Japanese visitors, which was kind of cool. They were specifically looking for beavers and bring them there. So I don't know if there's ever capacity for interpreters or ambassador type people to be out there, but it just seems like there's people coming back. COVID's over-ish. Maybe it's a good idea for someone to be out there sometimes. I don't know, but it seems like that's me. Others are out there too, and maybe you're reading the same thing. It's kind of encouraging, but and then the only other question I just kind of had a question was in the discussion of all the boardwalk, coming, going pieces that we're thinking about, what actually happens to the decking that's removed and taken away? Because like my personal thought was like, when we look at a section being, poor, I think we're talking about the moorings and the pilings tilting and falling over, but the decking hardly ever seems to be in bad shape unless it's been like waterlogged and kind of destroyed maybe, but might just.
Yeah, for the most part, and I'll let Chad jump in. But for the most part, when the wood is salvageable, it's actually part of the recommendations that the BIBO committee made to this group, that where possible, we're repurposing that decking. And only bits and pieces are new as needed.
Right. Okay, cool. I'm just curious. Just saw that.
And I'll even go as far to add just that there were some sections that were, I think Chad can correct me, that were still good, but weren't used, and they're being stored at the Hinton Mountain Bike parking lot right now. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with them, but.
Yeah, they are still okay. They just haven't been hauled away. I'm not sure exactly what can be done with them or where they can be used, but we'll hold on to them for a time. If we need them, we'll use them.
Thanks. Anything else, Kevin?
Great, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Nice
Alice?
to meet you in person.
So would this be the time to ask about agenda items for next time?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a discussion with her. Review a little bit about what you're talking about. Everyone stands on it, and I do find it a bit confusing that it's separate from the boardwalk, and it just seems out of place to me. I'd like to talk about it.
question before we move forward.
Yep.
If a motion is defeated, can that be brought up again?
Okay.
Ever?
A year.
A year, okay. Do you understand, does everybody understand what that means?
I don't understand what you're.
Okay,
Are
so if
referring to a
you,
motion that was already made?
no, so like, let's say that you, right now, were to make a motion that you want to talk about the bridge at the next meeting, and if that gets defeated by the group, we cannot bring that up again for a year. So sometimes in committees, it makes a little bit more sense if maybe you wait till the next one, we have a little bit more information, maybe Diana organically gets here anyway because of the conversations I'm having with her. So that's just a little bit on the strategy behind that,
Okay,
just so everybody understands the rules.
okay, so I would actually have to make a motion to get her on the agenda.
Correct.
I see, okay. Yeah, I don't wanna wait it too long, but I'm okay, I don't think I need to make a motion. It sounds like we're getting more information about that, so. Yeah.
Anything else? Joel?
Oh, I'm gonna bring up, there's a section in this report, I forget which one it was, either it's section G, and then there's like that gravel trail. It's not really gravel per se, it's like that muddy.
Oh, gee. Yeah.
Yeah, the G part where like, you get that, like, you have the wood, and then you get onto this gravel path, and then there's a section where it's just all mud. Which I was like, yeah. I've been walking there, I've been tolerating it, but like, there's like these little stepping stones on there. You jump from over it, but I just feel like you're already enjoying like a smooth walk. You don't have to worry about like stepping off back and on. I just feel like, is there any way possible that there could be something done with it?
Chad, are you aware of what section he's kind of referring to? Because it might fall within that communications that we're gonna do tomorrow about springtime weather and trails.
Yeah, I am aware. It's very close to that same section. So it's, like if you look on the map, you can see it's kind of joining. So right at the end of C is where I believe where Morris had mentioned on the Facebook post, and then like G is right there as well, right? So yeah, it absolutely should be included. I know that kind of area is all, like, it's habitually muddy in there, and we can put gravel, and we have put gravel in there, but it kind of always ends up just sinking in over time. But yeah, we are going to work on that.
Did you want to add something to that?
No, that was just the same section that Morris was talking about, and Chad made a comment there, so.
How Morris was talking about going into C. Yeah. Didn't I hear Chad say C?
Yeah, I believe that's where, I thought that's where Morris was.
No, Joan is talking about going into G.
Yeah,
Well, around that section.
Yeah, but you're right, like when you come off G and get onto the non-decking, there's about 30 meters or so where it's mud, and people have actually placed stepping stones to help. And it's always been like that. And so, I mean, I think he's asking, is there something that can be done to get rid of, like, to not be chomping to the mud?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's what my trails budget's for, is for that kind of stuff. So.
And just further, just so everybody's aware, Chad and I actually had a conversation about exactly that today. And we're gonna be sending out a communications to advise people that it's spring, the conditions of the trails are not great, but we need to wait a little bit for kind of the moisture in the soils to move back to kind of towards the wetland, dry up a bit, and then they can get in there and do a bit of work on them. To do it now, they're just gonna get ruined again. So
Yeah, our machines will sink like
that too.
crazy, right? So it's definitely on the agenda to be done.
Alice?
So is that maybe one day something the committee considers extending the boardwalk sections?
Like with the decking is up at him.
that G section has already been extended.
That's true.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely a definite option.
That would be super easy to do with volunteers. We could do that this summer.
Yeah.
We have the decking already salvaged, presumably some of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? We could probably utilize that or get some new stuff.
Anything further, John?
Oh, I don't so.
Okay. Well. With us, Tom? You're muted, Tom. There you go.
Sorry, just too much technology at one time for me. Nothing really to discuss. Haven't really got to get out as much lately. I'm having a bit of a viral adventure. Getting to the backside of that, thankfully. I'm grateful for the opportunity to get back out. That's about all I've got.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Doug?
I'm still thinking about specifications, and I'm really thinking it'd be a good idea if we could basically just write down what Fine Line did in a, a 2 or 3 page document, and then that just becomes what we ask people to build when it comes to boardwalks. So I'm just not quite sure how to phrase that thought, is that thing.
I'm thinking, Doug, like in my mind, that was part of me reaching out to Diana and seeing if it's even possible with respect to adjusting her scope. Chad has those documents, so it would just be about pulling out the information. So that was kind of already going to happen in my mind, especially if Diana was open or able. But if you guys want to do a motion to generate a document, we can. I was kind of already planning on bringing that.
I think I would like to, but how about, you said you're already working on some stuff, so how about maybe we can make an emotion to discuss it more at the next meeting. Maybe you'll have some information pulled by then, and we can take a look and see what that is like before going any further. Does that sound more reasonable?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so how about,
absolutely. But in that case, you're asking for an agenda item, so we'll need a motion, Doug, and then it'll be
Yeah.
determined by the group.
Yeah, you said you wanted to move that, right, Doug?
yeah, I'll make a motion to discuss Fine Line specification at the next meeting.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but just I'd like to make a motion that we discuss for the next agenda, that we discuss the section paralleling Rob Road that goes into the Hinton parking lot. Because in my recollection, we've never finalized that. We said that we would add it to an agenda, and we never did.
okay. So, cool, that's great, you can make that motion, but per the procedure bylaw, they have to be dealt with one at a time.
Oh,
So we have to
you're
deal
right,
with-
sorry, I
So we
forgot.
have
we
to
did both.
deal
Yep,
with,
yep,
we have
yep.
to deal with Doug's first.
Yep.
So are there any comments or questions or about Doug's, Alice?
I'll be voting in favor.
Okay. Comments or questions about it before we call it the question? Okay. Seeing no, nothing. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Okay. So that'll be an agenda item for next time.
I'd like to make a motion that we add to the agenda item for next meeting, discussion on the section of boardwalk that parallels Rob Road going into the parking lot, which is not on the map.
So
And
does
if you
every,
need further information, I can tell you right now.
so is everybody?
Well, because we've discussed it many times, like we put some money from this year's maintenance fund into that section, even though at the very beginning, when we said that that's not part of our purview. So I think, and I'm not leaning on either side. We need, as a group, we need to determine if that's under our purview.
Okay, so is everybody familiar with, sorry, which section Jan's referring to? Joan, Joan, do you know where? It's not attached to the Beaver Boardwalk. It's so over by the bike park. Yeah,
Isn't that
like
little
between.
wooded bridge?
Mhm.
Is it that part? Okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that.
it goes from the graveyard down, towards the.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that, yeah.
Okay, are there any comments or questions regarding the motion?
And this is just to discuss it as an agenda item.
Yeah. Okay, seeing nothing regarding the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that was also unanimous. Okay. All right. Round table. Sorry, did I go to you, Doug? Round table? Yeah, okay. Chad, you got anything?
Nope.
Okay. Other,
The only additional thing I had was a leftover item regarding the little timestamps on our videos that are posted on YouTube. We looked into it, pretty easy to do, not so easy to do when we have closed sessions because we're stopping and starting the video so it doesn't flow. So we're gonna try it out, see how much extra work it ends up being for my crew to have to go through and then put it, the actual placing of those is not difficult at all. In this case, I would say we don't typically have closed sessions, so this might be one of the longer ones, you know, with the bio break and everything that they might have to sit down. So if it's 20 minutes, that's no big deal. We can definitely manage this. So it's possible. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it in terms of the amount of time it's taking from staff to do that. And then I'll report back.
so I have nothing. Got everybody right? Didn't miss anybody? Brings us to next meeting date. That's scheduled for Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 at 5:30, same place, same time. Comments or questions about that? Our last bit of business, I need a motion to adjourn. Beth, all those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you, people.
Yep, thanks.
Bye, Chad.
Look at it yet.
Thanks, everybody.
I may do some of them, I may not do some.